This is a compilation video of your top 10 Dollar Tree projects I have done so far this year. I hope you find tons of inspiration and enjoy today's video. Some wooden beads. I purchased mine from Amazon, and I have a link in my Amazon store, which is in my description box below if you are interested. We're going to be using two different sizes. The smaller one measures about 1 centimeter, and you'll need around 65 of those. The largest one measures about 2 centimeters, and you will need 4 of those. We're going to take a Ziploc bag and some white acrylic paint. We're just going to put a couple of squirts of paint inside of the Ziploc bag. Then we're going to add all of our beads. I didn't know exactly how many beads I was going to need in the beginning, so I end up adding the entire small bag and then about half of the other small bag. And I had a few left over. So since I have completed the project, I know that you'll need around 65 of those. You're going to want to close that up tightly and then swoosh it around, kind of squish it flat, and make sure all of your beads get some paint on them. Now this is going to be kind of a thick paint, and it's not going to be a full coverage, but that is what I was going for. I wanted to have a little bit of that natural wood peek through. Then you're going to go ahead and put your beads on a paper plate, and I didn't have one large enough, so I had to use 2 smaller ones because you don't want them to clump together. You want to shake them gently so that they each separate and they'll be able to dry thoroughly. And here I'll show you a close-up as to what I'm talking about, them not fully covering. If you want full coverage, you may need to add a little bit of water to thin your paint out. Now we're going to take 2 of these gorgeous signs from Dollar Tree. We're going to remove the hangers from the back. I'm going to use my heavy-duty staple lifter, which I have in my Amazon store as well, to remove those. And note, these beads are the exact same size as the ones that we're using for this project, so you could reuse these beads in the project, or that'll give you a better idea of about what size beads I'm using. Now, the outside edge has this raw MDF wood look, so I'm going to take that same white acrylic paint and a Dollar Tree sponge brush and go around the outside edge. Originally, I was trying to be very careful not to get it on the top, but I do end up painting the top since my white paint doesn't match it. We're going to go around the edge for both of the signs as well as the back. So I'm trying to be careful as I'm going around the back because I originally thought I only needed it on the edge, but I end up painting the entire back because you want it to have a nice finished look, and you could potentially see parts of this when the project is complete. We're going to paint the other side the exact same way. Once that dries, that's when I'm like, well, this paint does not match perfectly with the top, and I want everything to look cohesive and match. So I'm going to gently take that sponge brush and go around just the top rim of both of these signs, and then allow them to dry. Now, once they're dry, we are going to flip them over to the back side. So you're only using the one sign. We're going to flip that over, and we're going to glue each one of these beads to the outside rim. We're going to attach the next one right next to it. I'm not leaving any gaps. We're going to do that around the entire outside rim of the sign. And this is why I painted the back of the sign, is because you can see a little bit through in between each of these beads, and I want it to have a nice finished look. I'm going to use my hairdryer to remove any of those glue strands. Then we're going to take our other sign, and I'm going to make sure that they line up the way the grooves are on the sign, so that when we attach the two together, they're going to look the same at the top and the bottom. So we're going to flip them back over to the back side, so when I flip it over, they'll match. We're going to add a bead of hot glue around the outside edge, and you're going to want to do that fairly quickly so that the glue doesn't go ahead and set up before you attach the two pieces together. If you want to, you could definitely use a permanent glue, put that on there, and then clamp the pieces together until that sets up. So this is super beautiful just how it is, but I want to have some feet on mine, so that's why we're going to use those 4 larger beads. I'm going to go ahead and place those where I want them to be, And mine were about 6 inches apart. I'm going to hot glue each one of those down, and of course you could use a permanent glue if you like. And I think this project turned out absolutely gorgeous. But I would love to know what you guys think. I am using a Dollar Tree Hurricane glass vase, but you could use a battery-operated LED candle. Whichever one you choose, you'll want to measure the diameter at the bottom. In this case, mine is 10 3/4 of an inch. I'm going to use a Dollar Tree square and some of their wood sticks. You're going to line the sticks up to make sure they're all flush at the bottom where the square is. And you'll want to do that until you get the diameter of your candle or vase. So I did make mine about 1/4 of an inch longer, so I used 11 inches. I again made sure everything was flush at the bottom, and I'm using some double-sided sticky tape. You'll place that about 3/4 of the way down on each of the sticks, press it down firmly, and make sure you get in between all of the grooves, kind of pushing that tape down in between every one of those sticks. This is going to make sure that they stay pretty close together. I did leave a little excess tape on there, so I made sure that it was going to fit all the way around my cylinder before I removed the back side of the sticky tape. Then I set the cylinder flush at the bottom and wrapped the wood sticks around. Then if you have any of the excess tape, you can tuck that down behind one of those wood pieces. Press it firmly, make sure everything adheres well. You can decorate this with some of these gorgeous florals from Temu, or I'm going to put a battery-operated LED candle in there, and this is a gorgeous piece to decorate your home with. I have this gorgeous decorative frame. It measures 10 7/8 of an inch by 13 1/4 of an inch. It has a really nice backing that has clamps on it. Now my backing does not come completely off, so the first thing I'm going to do is remove my glass and give it a nice thorough cleaning on both sides to remove any grime, dirt, or debris. I'm going to let that dry, and we're going to be covering it with this beautiful peel and stick wallpaper from Dollar Tree. Now it has a very nice smooth surface on the front, so that's going to work perfect for what I want to transform this frame into. I'm going to set that glass on top and mark each one of the corners so that I can line my design up. You can use some scissors, but I'm going to use a paper cutter so I can make sure I get nice straight edges all the way around and that my design is even in the center. Once you have everything cut out, it is now time to apply it to the glass. You just peel the backing from the wallpaper. Now I do have to turn my glass around so I can make sure that I line everything up at the bottom. And once I get that first end started and I press it down real good, I'm going to turn it back around so that I'll be able to pull the backing from the wallpaper and press it down as I go along. Now this wallpaper adheres really well and it did not leave any wrinkles. Now let's work on the frame. I'm going to paint mine with 2 thin coats of white chalk paint, allowing each coat to dry in between. And I'm making sure to get down into all of those details on the frame as well as the inside rim, because you will be able to see that when the project is finished. Now once my white paint has dried after the second coat, I'm going to take some folk art enamel in the color gold, and I'm going to apply this with a sponge brush just by dabbing very little paint on the end of that brush and then very gently going over all of those details on the frame. Now don't worry about if you make a mistake. You can fix it. It's just paint. Just make sure that you let it dry. See, I have some spots here that I don't want to be gold. So I let that dry, and then I'm going to cover it back up with some white paint. Now, once all of that is dry, we can add our glass back to the frame. Now, I want to use mine as a tray, so I'm going to reinforce that by applying some E6000 right inside that groove because I want to make sure that glass does not come out, and make sure you have a nice sturdy backing if you're going to use it for a decorative tray. I am loving this color combination of blue, white, and gold. Project, you will need 2 of Dollar Tree's 12-inch honey plastic planters. You can find these in the Dollar Tree Plus section for $5 a piece. I also found these at Dollar General, but they wanted $10 a piece. I'm using my hairdryer to loosen the glue so that I'll be able to remove the labels. And I am using Loctite Premium. You can find this at Lowe's. You're also going to need some latex gloves. We're going to flip one of those planters over, and right there at that rim on the bottom, we're going to apply a really good amount of that Loctite. Then we'll set the second planter on top of that, and I'm going to put a 1-gallon paint can in there to give it some weight and make sure the two pieces adhere together. So while that glue is setting, I'm going to take this wood round I found at Lowe's for $8. It's 1 inch thick and it's 15 inches round. If you can't find these, you could also use a $5 pizza pan in the Plus section at Dollar Tree. I'm going to set these up on my little plastic triangles, and I have that listed in my Amazon store below in my description box if you're interested in those. It just makes it so much easier to paint. I'm using Men Wax in the color Espresso, and I am applying this with a sponge brush and then going over it with a lint-free cloth to blend it in and remove any of that excess stain. You'll do that for all sides, and once your glue has set up, we're going to attach that wood piece directly to the top of one of those planters using that same Loctite Premium. Just center that on top, apply some pressure, and allow that glue to set up. Then I'm going to flip it upside down, and to give it a little bit of a decorative accent, I'm going to add some nautical rope with that Loctite around the center. Not only is it going to be a nice decorative accent, it's also going to give us some extra support to hold those pieces together. Then I went back over it with a wet napkin to make sure I removed any of that excess glue that was on the planters, and you have a gorgeous patio side table for less than $20. We're going to be using one of Dollar Tree's 3.5-inch terracotta pots, and we'll give that 1 coat of black chalk paint. I also made sure to paint the top rim as well as inside the pot a little bit. Grab a bowl. Any bowl will do. I'm using a Dollar Tree bowl. This has a print on one side, and it measures about 5.5 inches across the top. I'm going to give this 2 coats of crimson chalk paint. This is made by Waverly. It is going to give you the most beautiful deep red color. Once that dries, we're going to take one of Dollar Tree's small sponge brushes and dab that into some black chalk paint and make sure that we have it evenly spread across the sponge. We're going to draw a line in the center of the bottom of our bowl. Then we'll bring that line down on one side, turn it around, and bring the line down again on the opposite side. So you'll have one continuous line that runs from one side of the bottom of the bowl to the other side. Using a larger Dollar Tree sponge applicator, we're going to dab that into the black chalk paint and create a semicircle at the bottom of one of those lines on one side. Now you can make this as big or as small as you like. Then we're going to take that same sponge brush applicator, dip that into our paint, and hold it in place to create the perfect circles on the outside of the bowl. I'm going to add a couple of those on each side of the line, and then we'll take the smaller sponge brush to create some smaller circles throughout on each side. So you can add as many dots as you like to create this beautiful ladybug. Make sure you allow that to thoroughly dry. This is how mine is looking. Then we're going to take the end of a wooden dowel, the flat end, dip that into our white paint, and then create two small white circles for the eyes. You can also use the end of a paintbrush for this. Once you have allowed all of the paint to dry, we're going to seal everything in with some Mod Podge. This is going to protect that chalk paint from the weather and being outdoors. I'm using a matte Mod Podge. If you would like a shinier look, you could use a gloss Mod Podge. Just try to make sure you keep your brush strokes minimal so it'll have a beautiful finish. I allowed that to dry overnight, and then you can add in your favorite plant or flower, and this will give your garden or patio area a beautiful pop of color. Grab one of Dollar Tree's glass bowls, and we're going to use some blue gemstones for this. We're going to do this the exact same way we did with the vase, starting at the bottom and working our way up to the rim. Make sure you use a permanent glue, because if you only use hot glue, they will pop off of the glass. This is how far you'll get down with one bag, so you will need an additional bag to finish that off. Then I'm going to use my hair dryer once I have all of the gemstones in place to remove any of the glue strands. We're going to take one of Dollar Tree's solar lights. Make sure you remove the tabs and the labels. We're going to take the top part of the solar light and we're going to glue that inside of our glass bowl so that it's going to look something like this. So when you add your permanent glue, make sure you're adding it only to the black parts and not on the panels. Set that down in there and let that glue set up thoroughly. I let mine set for a couple of hours. Then I took the plastic piece out so I can flip it over because it's not going to sit level if you leave that plastic piece on there. I wanted to finish off adding the gems at the top, but making sure not to cover up the solar panel. I'm again removing all of the glue strands. Now you could take the plastic piece out and leave it set on a table just like this. It's absolutely gorgeous. Or you could set it in your garden like that. Or you can add the plastic piece back on as well as the stake, and you can set this inside of your garden like this. This turned out absolutely gorgeous. A terracotta pot from Dollar Tree and a piece of plain copy paper. We're going to take a pencil and rest that at the top rim of the flower pot and rotate it around to the other side of the paper. Then come back and take your pencil and place that at the bottom of the flower pot and rotate it, keeping it in the same direction that the top line is. Then you can cut this out. Wrap it around the bottom of the flower pot right underneath the rim. And then where they overlap, you're going to fold that piece over and make a crease. Take your pencil and draw a line where the crease is. Then you're going to cut the piece that you just drew the line on, as well as the crease. But where you cut for the crease, leave a little bit of excess so that the paper will be able to overlap itself when you wrap it around the flower pot. Now once you wrap it around, you're going to have a little bit more at the bottom than you need. So I'm going to take a pencil and I'm going to leave a little bit extra paper at the very bottom, but I'm going to make a mark on both sides of my paper. And then when I unfold that, I can cut from that one mark to the second mark, but going in the direction of the curve that I have already cut out. Then I'm going to wrap that around the flower pot to make sure that it is the size that I want it to be, and that you do have some hanging over the bottom. Now we can take the fabric, and I'm going to use this gorgeous fabric from Dollar Tree, and I'm going to place that paper template on top of it, holding it in place with some sewing pins. Make sure you stretch your fabric out nice and flat, and then cut it out around your template. Now keep your template if you're going to make several of these flower pots in the same size. Now mine has a gorgeous green color in it, and I'm going to use Waverly's chalk paint in the color Celery to paint my terracotta pot with one coat. I chose to paint mine inside and out because I don't plan on putting real flowers in here. I don't have a green thumb when it comes to indoor plants. If you do choose to use these for real plants, you may want to check into a sealant over the paint just to protect your fabric from discoloring when you water your plant. I'm not sure exactly what kind of sealant that would be, but you may need to do something extra to protect that fabric. Now once the paint dries, I'm going to apply an even layer of Mod Podge underneath the rim all the way around the pot. Then I can place my fabric there, press it down, and make sure there aren't any wrinkles and everything is flat. When I get to the pieces that overlap, I'm going to hold that back, add a little bit more Mod Podge, press that down. Then I'm going to go over the entire layer of fabric on the outside of the flower pot with a layer of Mod Podge to seal that in and to keep my fabric from getting dirty. I'm going in different directions to make sure I get that Mod Podge in between all of those fabric fibers. At the very bottom, I'm going to go ahead and seal those two pieces together where they overlap. And then I'm going to take some scissors and cut slits almost to the very bottom of the pot and rotate it and cut another one about a ½ inch all the way around. So you'll make quite a few slits at the bottom. Then you can add a layer of Mod Podge to the bottom of your pot and then push those pieces down and add another layer on top of that. This is a great way to make beautiful customized flower pots to suit your decor or give as gifts. Project, we will be using some of Dollar Tree's rub-on transfers. I'm going to cut out the ones that I want to use for this project individually, and we're using one of Dollar Tree's house-shaped signs. If you've never used these before, you just peel the backing off, place your transfer where you want it to go. You're going to use something with a flat edge. You want to apply a good amount of pressure, but not too much where you're going to damage the surface. Then you'll peel that top piece back, and if the transfer doesn't want to stay on your surface, kind of use your fingernail and press and scrape those areas until it stays, and then just slowly peel the paper back. Now I chose to go ahead and add the flowers at the bottom and the center and cut each individual garden tool and watering can and flower and place those at the bottom. Now I did find that with these transfers, the ones with the very thin lines, they took a little bit more time to make sure they adhere to the surface, but some of the larger ones did great. Then I applied the sign itself for the Farm Fresh flowers in the center. Now because this sign has some grooves in it, I did make sure I take the flat edge and go in between those grooves, scraping so that the transfer will stay inside those grooves. Now you could leave it just like that, but I want to spruce the hanger up a bit, so I'm going to use some of these buffalo check and white beads. I purchased these from Amazon, and I have them linked in my Amazon store in my description box below if you are interested in those. I'm going to alternate between the white and the buffalo check and fill that hanger up, but make sure you leave enough space so that you can feed that through and tie a knot on the back. So once I get my knot tied, I will add a little bit of hot glue to secure that to make sure the hanger does not come through. And this was such an easy project, but I think it turned out absolutely beautiful. We're using one of Dollar Tree's glass hurricane vases. I'm going to take a Tupperware dish and some white chalk paint and mix that with a little bit of truffle chalk paint. Blend that very well. It's going to give you a very muted brown color, like a creamy brown. We're going to take some baking soda. We're going to add 1.5 spoonfuls to begin with. Mix that very, very thoroughly. Make sure you get all those clumps out. This is going to give us some nice texture. I added about another 1/2 spoonful because I wanted mine to have more texture to it. Once it's blended, we're going to take and paint our bottom of our hurricane glass vase. And then we're going to work our way up to the top. So I'm trying to keep some of those brush strokes out and keep it even going around, but I want some of that texture to show through. You're going to do this all the way till you get to the top of the glass, and then you're going to let that dry. Now, to speed up the process, you can use your heat tool or your hair dryer to kind of speed that up, because I'm going to add a second coat once that thoroughly dries. You don't want to keep adding a lot of paint on there because it's just going to clump up and smear around as it's drying. That's why you want to make sure you apply thin coats, allow them to dry, and then go to your next coat. So I applied 2 coats. It's going to give me a good texture, and I'm going to let that dry. Then we're going to take some black chalk paint, and I'm going to paint the bottom of the vase as well as a little bit up the bottom of the vase. Now, I apologize because the camera does get out of focus for a little bit. I am using one of Dollar Tree's, they call it like a stencil brush. It has these jagged edges. I'm going to dab that into my black chalk paint, wipe most of it off, and then I'm dabbing it around to soften the lineup that we previously painted. Then I'm going to go around the entire base of this, just pouncing it up and down to create some beautiful color and texture on there. We'll do that all the way to almost the top, and then I'm going to paint the top portion of the vase with that black chalk paint. Now, I did make that a little bit thicker of a line around the top than I did the bottom, but you can paint yours however you like. Then we're going to take that stencil brush, dab around that line to soften those edges up. Again, it is very important that you make sure each layer dries before you move to the next color. Otherwise, it's just going to blend in together. So now that it's dry, I'm going to take an acrylic paint in the color Burnt Umber. This has like a little reddish tint. I'm using a clean stencil brush. You want to use a clean, dry stencil brush for each color. And we're going to do the exact same thing by dabbing that around in between the black and our base coat. You don't want to completely cover it. You still want some of your base coat to show through as well as some of that black. Then we're going to take a khaki color. This is going to give it a nice highlight. We'll do the exact same thing again with a clean brush. And it's real important to use a dry one because if you use a wet one, it's really just going to smear it. We're going to dab all around the middle of our vase until we get the desired color that we're looking for. But you still want some of your other colors to show through. So you're just layering it up, but you want to make sure that your browns, your black, and your base is still showing. Once that dries, we're going to take some white acrylic paint. We're going to do the exact same thing. And don't worry about if you add too much. You can go back and add your other colors once it dries if you feel like you added too much or if you want a little bit more of a darker color to show through, you can always go back and add that in. Once that dries, I'm going to take this chip brush from Dollar Tree, dab that into my black paint, and I'm very, very gently going to scrape it around. It's going to give it some lines. It's going to blend in some of those splotchy dots that we put on there, and it's going to give it a little bit more texture. Again, don't worry if you mess it up. It's paint. You can go back. You can touch it up. If you need to grab your little stencil brushes, you can go back and touch those areas up as well. But you can make this as dark or as light as you like. And I think it turned out really pretty. It has almost like a stone granite look to it. We're going to set that down on the bottom. You want to make sure that you paint the top rim as well as inside of the vase a little bit to give it a nice finished look. And I'm using the black chalk paint for that. You could seal it if you like, depending on how you want to use it in your home decor, but you can style this in various different ways. Using 2 of these Dollar Tree signs. They measure 15 3/4 of an inch by 5 5/8 of an inch. For each sign, we will remove the twine hanger from the back as well as the label. Then take some sandpaper and sand that down nice and smooth. On the front side, we're painting the frame itself with some black paint. And make sure to get the outside edges of the sign because you will be able to see that. It's going to give it a nice, clean, finished look, and it's going to hide any imperfections in the sign. We're using 2 of these ornament-shaped signs. I think this came from Family Dollar or Dollar General for $1, but I just found this in my craft stash. I'm going to remove the hanger as well as that label, and I had to use my hairdryer to loosen that glue up to get the label off. Sand everything down, flip it over, and this one has like a metal piece on the front. We're going to remove that and sand it down as well. You will need 2 of these for this project. I'm painting both of these with the same black paint. Make sure to get the outside edges as well as the back. Now these ornaments have a beautiful like faux shiplap look on the front. We're also going to be using 2 of Dollar Tree's metal plant brackets. Again, we're not going to be able to use the screws that came with these because they're too long, so you'll need some smaller screws for this project. Now, this is the shiplap look on the front. I want to make sure I attach my bracket to the back side, the flat side. So we're going to take that bracket and attach it where the little screw holes are and make sure that it is flush to the back of the ornament. So I'm just kind of using a level to make sure I get the bracket flush to the back so I can make my marks with my marker where the screws are going to go. I'm going to drill just a pilot hole. I do not want to go through the wood. I just want it to make it easier for me to add the screws in. To reinforce it a little more, since those screws are really short, I'm going to add some permanent heavy-duty glue, in this case E6000, to the bracket, and we're going to make sure that that long piece is flush to the back and add our screws in. The screws are just going to tighten it up, make sure that E6000 gets good adhesion and it's nice and flat to your ornament piece. Remove any excess glue. It should be looking like this. You're going to do the exact same thing with the other bracket and ornament sign. Now for our frame, I need to make a hanger, so I'm going to reuse the twine that came on it. But I highly recommend that you use a heavy-duty hanger like a sawtooth hanger because the brackets are a little heavy. I am actually just using like some hot glue, some staples to reinforce it, and even more hot glue. But again, I recommend a heavy-duty hanger for this. You could add the twine just as a decorative feature. To make sure that my hangers match perfectly, I just lined each sign next to each other to make sure that they're the same length and separated in the same distance. Now we can take our bracket with our ornament on there. We're going to attach it to the center of the sign. This sign makes it super easy since it has that faux shiplap. You know exactly where to place it. Since there aren't any screw holes available, we're going to make sure we add a good amount of the permanent glue, the E6000. Then we can place this directly on our sign. I also made sure to put some glue on the back side of that ornament and use some heavy clamps to clamp that in place to make sure that your glue adheres well to your sign. Let it set up overnight. Make sure the glue has completely cured. And we're doing the exact same thing with the other sign. Now to decorate these, you can use some battery-operated candles. I highly recommend battery, not real candles, because, you know, this is hanging on the wall. You don't want a fire hazard. And this is how it looks with the candles. But to give it an even more elevated look, you could use some of these Dollar Tree glass candle holders. Again, make sure that you use a battery-operated candle like this battery-operated Dollar Tree votive candle. And if you use this method to make your sconce, make sure to adhere your glass candle holder to that ornament piece using some permanent glue. These turned out absolutely gorgeous. You guys let me know if you like it better with the glass candle holder or with the plain battery operated candles. I hope you enjoyed today's projects, and if you have a favorite, let me know in the comments section down below. I always love to know which one is your favorite. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. Please take care, and I will see you guys next time.